Have you ever seen a painting that stops you in your tracks, grabs your emotions, and makes you feel both anger and pity all at once? That's The Irritating Gentleman by Berthold Woltze. For you. Honestly, the title is already loaded with sarcasm. Gentleman? Really? Let's not sugarcoat it. This guy is about as gentlemanly as a mosquito at a picnic. But the more you study the painting, the more layers of discomfort, nuance, and maybe even a sliver of hope start to emerge. Let's set the scene. It's 1874. We're on a rickety train barreling through the German countryside. The cramped interior of the carriage immediately feels oppressive. You can almost hear the steady clatter of the wheels on the tracks and smell the stale air mixed with cigar smoke. In the center of the painting sits a young girl, and at first glance she doesn't look like she's having a good day. On closer inspection, it's clear. She's dressed in mourning. She's clad in a black cape with simple buttons, black leather gloves, and her hat rests on the seat beside her. Her hair flows down her back, unpinned. A small but important detail we'll get into later. Her left hand clutches a coin purse and a crumpled white handkerchief. These are not just props, they're artifacts of her grief. She's clearly mourning someone close to her, maybe one or both of her parents. Her age, accentuated by her long, unbound hair and her overall delicate appearance, suggests she's far too young to have lost a spouse. Beside her, a carpet bag with a cheerful floral pattern sits as a silent contrast to the somberness of her clothing. It hints at her youth and innocence, emphasizing the tragedy of her situation. Perhaps she's traveling to or from a funeral, and this journey is as heavy as the grief she carries. Now, let's talk about the so-called gentleman. Oh boy, where do we even start with this guy? He's leaning over her seat, cigar in hand, as if he owns the train, the space, and everyone in it. The smoke from his cigar curls around him like a villain in a melodrama, and you can practically feel the ashes sprinkling down onto the girl's floral bag below. Does he care? Absolutely not. His oversized clownish bow tie and his round spectacles give him the air of a caricature, like the kind of guy who shows up uninvited to ruin a perfectly good party. His smirk? It's the kind of smirk that makes you want to reach through the canvas and ask, "Sir, have you considered not being the worst?" Let's not ignore the mutton chops framing his face. Sure, they were fashionable for the time, but on him, they somehow make him look even more predatory. His coat, casually draped over the girl's backrest, is just another layer of intrusion. This man doesn't just invade her space physically, he's oozing entitlement. He leans in too close, hovering over her like a dark, unwelcome cloud. His entire demeanor screams, "I get what I want because I can." Honestly, if audacity were a sport, this guy would be an Olympic gold medalist. But here's where it gets worse. The girl's hair flows freely down her back, unpinned. Why does this matter? In the 19th century, a girl's hair was a powerful social signal. Once she reached her mid-teens, usually around 15 or 16, she would pin up her hair to signify her transition into womanhood and her eligibility for marriage. The fact that this girl's hair is down is a clear indicator that she is still a child. This man knows it. He can see it as clearly as we can. And yet, here he is, leaning in, smirking, and completely disregarding any sense of decency. The girl's body language is telling. She's rigid, tense, and leaning ever so slightly away from him. Her upper body twists away, as if she's trying to create even an inch of distance between them. And then, there's her expression. Her wide eyes stare directly at us, breaking the fourth wall. She's not looking at her surroundings, the man, or even the distant horizon. She's looking straight into our souls. Her gaze is a silent plea. Help me. A single tear streaks down her right cheek, and we're left to wonder, was she already crying before this man's unwanted advances? Or is he the cause of her tears? Maybe it's both. In the background, we see another figure, an older man, possibly the gentleman's travel companion. He's seated across from them, staring blankly into the distance. His expression is hard to read. Is he disgusted but unwilling to intervene? Or is he deliberately ignoring the situation, pretending not to notice the discomfort radiating off the girl. Whatever the case, his inaction only adds to the suffocating atmosphere of the scene. Now here's a twist. What if this girl isn't as helpless as she seems? What if she has a secret weapon hidden in plain sight? During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, women didn't have pepper spray or self-defense classes, but they did have something small, sharp, and surprisingly effective: the hat pin. Yes, you heard that right. Hat pins weren't just for securing elaborate hats. They were also for securing a woman's personal space. In fact, by the early 1900s, hat pins had become the go-to self-defense tool for women dealing with unwanted advances in crowded public spaces like trains and streetcars. There's even a famous story about a woman named Leotie Blaker from Kansas who, while visiting New York City in 1903, used her hat pin to fend off a man who got a little too close on a crowded stagecoach. Without hesitation, she jabbed the pin into his arm. And just like that, the predator turned into prey. Hat pins weren't just practical. They became a symbol of independence and empowerment. Theodore Roosevelt himself once quipped, "No man, however courageous, likes to face a resolute woman with a hatpin in her hand." Women even wrote songs about them, like the cheeky tune "Never Go Walking Without Your Hatpin," which went something like this. Never go walking without your hatpin. The law won't let you carry more than that. For if you go walking without your hatpin, you may lose your head as well as your hat. So, back to the girl in the painting. Look closely at her left hand. Yes, she's holding a coin purse, but notice her grip. It looks like she's using her thumb and pointer finger to grasp something. Could it be that she's reaching for a hatpin? Is she about to defend herself? It's a tantalizing possibility. Woltze doesn't make it obvious, leaving the question open to interpretation. But the thought of this girl finding her courage and giving this gentleman a well-deserved poke is deeply satisfying. In the end, The Irritating Gentleman isn't just a painting. It's a story frozen in time, a snapshot of societal dynamics, personal courage, and the all-too-familiar battle against unwanted advances. It forces us to confront the worst parts of human behavior while holding on to a glimmer of hope that justice, even if it comes in the form of a humble hatpin, might still prevail. Feeling intrigued? Subscribe and brush a like onto this video like a master art detective.